Video games let us do incredible things. Be a superhero, go on adventures, afford home ownership. They allow us to live out fantasies that we can't experience in real life, which is why I like to play games that make me feel smart. There's very little I enjoy more than a game that really asks me to use my wits and rewards me for doing so. I love that aha moment that happens when the pieces click into place and I can walk away feeling like a genius for beating whatever challenge the game put in front of me. But as it turns out, that's not easy to do. Almost every game makes you feel accomplished. You beat a boss, land a difficult combo, survive a hard fight, but that's not quite the same as feeling smart. Making a game that really rewards a player for being clever, or at least lets them feel like it, is a challenge. So today we're talking about the games that made me feel like I could outwit the world's greatest detectives and how they did it. I'm going to avoid major spoilers in this video, but dissecting this topic is going to require some examples, so there may be some very, very light spoilers for some of these games. Cool? Cool. The most simple way that a game makes you feel smart is through the cycle of making observations and drawing conclusions from those observations. And that alone can sustain an entire gameplay loop, such as is the case in Return of the Obra Dinn. The year is 1807, and you are an insurance agent for the East India Company. Oh my god, this is the worst pitch for a game ever. The good ship Obra Dinn floats into port, battered and broken, without a living soul on board. Your job is to identify what happened to each of the 60 passengers, using your logbook and a magic pocket watch that lets you see the exact moment that somebody died. When you find a dead body, you can click the watch to hear what they heard in their last moments, and then see the instant that they died, frozen in time. You can then explore that memory, piecing together what happened, and potentially finding another body to investigate. Once you have a theory, you log it in your book. In my eyes, Return of the Obra Dinn is the de facto deduction game. It is the purest, most distilled form of making observations and drawing conclusions, and it serves as a fantastic example for several foundational elements that a game needs to give you that immensely satisfying feeling of being a genius. Most importantly, you must always feel that you arrived at the solution through your own effort and logic. There's no faster way to undercut a player's investment and intellectual curiosity than to signpost where the answer is with a glow around relevant items or having an arrow pointing toward the solution. And Return of the Obra Dinn very much lets you sink or swim on your own. Every memory you observe is preceded by some brief dialogue and then presented as is. The game's visuals don't distinguish between the important clues and the background details. Nothing in this game directs you towards answers. Which isn't to say that the game has no way of putting pieces together. On the contrary, there are usually several ways to pick out the identity and history of any given person, and multiple ways to reach your conclusions. You may find yourself wandering around at times, desperately looking for anything you've overlooked, but eventually, you'll find it. The pieces click into place, the light bulb turns on, and you feel like a savant for putting it all together. Now, there is always another way to get the right answers. The old reliable brute force guessing method. It is possible to do, but not really relevant for two reasons. First, solving the puzzles is the whole point of the game. I think the kind of person who purchases a game like this will probably not want to devalue the experience by trying to skip past its core conceit. The same generally holds true for every game in this video, as a matter of fact. And second, the game only confirms your guesses when you correctly identify the image, name, and cause of death of 3 separate passengers. This means that brute forcing it can end up being more tedious and time-consuming than just looking for clues directly. The game is rendered in these 1-bit graphics, which are just dripping with style, and the story that it tells is really fun to unravel. It took me around 8 hours to finish, and every minute of that was a delight. Go check this one out. Obra Dinn's formula of letting you verify clusters of information at a time is a very elegant system, which several other games have implemented as well. Chants of Sennaar uses something similar, but takes it further by adding a step to the process. Based on the story of the Tower of Babel, you play a traveler who has come to the tower with the goal of reaching the top. Every level of the tower is occupied by a different society with their own cultures, values, and most importantly, language. As you encounter symbols, they'll be added into your journal and you can manually enter what you think those symbols represent. Gather enough symbols and you can try to match words to pictures. Get all of the words on a page correct, and you get all of them confirmed at once. But in Chants of Sennaar, learning the words is only half the battle. Once you've learned how to interpret the language, then you actually have to use it. Chants of Sennaar draws on the tradition of point-and-click puzzle adventure games, where your progress up the tower is blocked by various obstacles, and understanding the language is often merely a prerequisite for figuring out what steps you need to take. There might be a machine or a code of some sort that you can only begin to understand once you've learned what the labels on it mean. A trick that this game and many other puzzle games will pull very frequently is to present you with the thing that you need to solve first. When you encounter the door, machine, or puzzle, it's clear what you want to achieve, but you have no idea the means by which you're supposed to. As you explore, the goal stays on your mind, and when you finally get the relevant information someplace else, your brain forms the connection. In doing so, you get information which can be synthesized immediately rather than waiting for a relevant use. The source of the information and the place that requires it will also be frequently separated, often taking between 15 to 45 seconds of travel. This is another trick that creates a small window of anticipation where you know what you have to do and how to do it, you just have to get there, and this heightens the intellectual payoff when you actually do it. There are a couple of sections of this game that didn't quite land for me. A few mandatory stealth sections in particular felt like a real drag, but overall Chants of Sennaar is a real delight, and despite being an award-winning title, it hasn't nearly gotten the attention that I think it deserves. It's a clever and heartfelt game about connection and communication, a game that makes you feel clever just for thinking about words. And that reminds me of another game that's all about words. This is Baba. Baba is you. This is Flag. Flag is win. Next level. This is Wall. Wall is stop. Oh no, Baba can't get to the flag. Baba's trapped. Unless Wall is no longer stop. Baba Is You is a game about rules. Each level tells you what rules to follow, and then it's up to you to figure out how to win. And if you can't win with those rules, simply change them. It's a deceptively simple premise that leads to some of the most mind-twisting puzzles that I have ever seen. The only controls the game presents are up, down, left, and right, and it functions as a sort of sliding block puzzle. The game's rule set is comprised of 3-word statements, things like lava is hot or rock is push. The first word tells you what game object is being affected, and the third word informs you of how that object behaves. Every level has a you and a win, the former being the object that you control and the latter being the goal for the level. Even these can be dynamic, which can lead to fun situations like this, or this. By rearranging the statements present in the level, you reshape the rules. Even in the first few levels of the game, you have to find some very creative and outside-the-box solutions. And this is why Baba Is You feels so satisfying to solve. It begins with very easy-to-digest concepts, things that will be familiar and conventional to anybody familiar with video games. Of course I'm playing as the cute little fluffy sheep thing. Of course reaching the flag is the goal. Of course I'm going to push a bunch of rocks around. These are all easy assumptions to make in the gaming landscape. We've almost been conditioned to expect them. The first couple of levels even reinforce these expectations before they start asking you to subvert them. Finding the unique ways to challenge your preconceptions about the very systems of the game is the fun of Baba Is You. This early level is my favorite in the game because I was stuck on it for nearly 10 minutes until I realized the very simple way that it challenges your assumptions. The game gets more complex as it goes on, introducing more objects and statuses, and the word and the word not, and it'll leave you twisted in knots because rock is you and crab is win, but I can't get to crab because crab is float and float is behind jelly, which is stop, and if rock were float, then jelly wouldn't stop and I could get to crab. Baba Is You plays with the motif of challenging your assumptions in another way that I really like. Often it will introduce a concept in one level and then change it very slightly in the next. The two levels may look similar, but you can't go in thinking that the same plan will work. Immediately asking you to think about the same core concept from multiple different angles gives players frequent opportunities to encounter and overcome those challenges. The game's style is charming, the music is a delight, and it is a challenging and innovative puzzle game that anyone who enjoys the genre should check out. Now you may have noticed that all of the examples I've used so far have come from puzzle games. Makes sense, right? After all, puzzle games by definition are all about solving puzzles, a perfect genre for making you feel smart. But it's not the only one that can do that. More action-oriented genres tend to rely a bit more on reaction time or perseverance than wit, but there's still plenty of opportunity. Heck, even in fighting games, I've had moments where I felt brilliant for seeing that an opponent always reacts to a move the same way, and then deliberately doing a mix-up to catch them off guard. See a problem, devise a solution, be rewarded for doing it. But for my money, the genre that takes the cake for this is the immersive sim. Games like Deus Ex or Dishonored. In contrast to a conventional puzzle game, which typically has a very narrow intended solution, immersive sims tend to present players with a single goal and give them a plethora of ways to pursue it. This means that no matter what the player has built into, they can be rewarded for using those skills and thinking creatively. It instills a sense that the player did it their way, cleverly using the tools that they chose to outsmart the game, rather than following the road that was laid for them by the devs. No game gave me this feeling more than Deathloop, in which you play as Colt, waking up on the same beach every morning, living the same day over and over again, hunting for a way to put a stop to it. In order to do so, you have to hunt down and kill 8 specific targets called visionaries before the day is out, and everybody on the island wants you dead. Deathloop did a fantastic job at making me feel like I was rewarded for creativity and cleverness on multiple levels. The day is broken up between morning, noon, afternoon, and night. During each period of time, you choose one of the 4 districts of Blackreef Island to visit. You only have 1 day to hunt down all 8 visionaries, and it isn't as simple as just finding and offing them. They're spread out across the zones and times, and your actions will have consequences. Wait too long and you might miss your chance at a visionary. A path that's open in the morning might be inaccessible at noon. As such, you have to investigate and learn the optimal steps to take out all 8 in 1 day, like a sociopathic Bill Murray. Around every corner you'll find documents, audio recordings, and other clues that hint at potential solutions. There is an in-game log, and you can turn on objective markers for major leads, but you'll very much be rewarded for exploration and discovery. Assembling the clues and piecing together the ways to get access to new places that carry more information is a very compelling loop, as you draw closer and closer to arranging that perfect golden loop. There are also a couple of lower stakes puzzles, which will reward you with decent loot and follow a more conventional puzzle design. From a gameplay lens, the weapons are fun, but it's the slabs that really define your playstyle. Special powers such as a short-range teleport or temporary invisibility. Personally, I'm fond of the one that links enemies so that damage done to one is dealt to all of them. I always felt like I had tools to approach the situation my own way, and I felt clever for exploiting side entrances and being tricky to get the drop on my targets. But of course, the biggest challenge, and the best opportunity to exercise your wits, is not against the enemies that the devs have placed for you, because this game has an invasion mechanic wherein another player can spawn in and try to hunt you down. You can turn this off if you want, but I always found it to be an exhilarating encounter. Coming out victorious rarely relies on reflexes or gear checks, and all-out firefights are infrequent. Rather, you'll win by getting the drop on your opponent, setting up a clever trap with mines or turrets, or outfoxing them and making your escape. Every time I came out of an invasion on top, I felt like a tactical genius. Deathloop has its flaws for sure, but I think it's a really unique, charming, and clever experience, and I felt very rewarded for using my brain in this game from start to finish. Now I want to take a moment to highlight how not to make a player feel smart. This problem is not unique to third-person action-adventure games, but they in particular have a very bad habit of locking you in a puzzle room, and then having the player character muse aloud to nobody in particular, hinting toward the solution. In most cases, these types of puzzles feel like arbitrary slowdowns, roadblocks that the devs were compelled to place either for pacing reasons or because of genre convention. Solving this puzzle does allow the player to make progress again, but it rarely amounts to more than put the square peg in the square hole. If the puzzle itself doesn't offer anything clever or unique, and the player is being pushed along toward the answer by the devs, it doesn't give them any opportunity to feel smart for overcoming the challenge. To be clear, I'm not saying that makes these bad games. I don't sit down to play an adventure game expecting mind-bending brain teasers, and gating progress behind complex puzzles could alienate an audience that picked up the game because they wanted to enjoy an adventure or combat game. But if you're going to include a puzzle in this type of game, it's worth taking steps to make sure that the player gets a chance to feel rewarded for solving it. This can be done in a couple of ways. The easy solution is to make hints an opt-in process. Give the player a button prompt to ask for a hint, like how Jedi Fallen Order did it. The other option is to turn the puzzle solving into side content. This won't block off or alienate players who don't want to be slowed down by puzzles, but gives players who are interested a chance to test their brain in between battles of brawn. Batman Arkham Asylum is my favorite example of this. The game's free-flow combat system basically defined the generation of superhero games that came after. The Predator missions are loads of fun, and they even tap into the open-ended, creative trap setting thing that I talked about earlier. The writing is good, and the voice cast is phenomenal. The Riddler challenges, on the other hand, are not universally beloved, but I think that they work very well. First of all, the riddles don't feel arbitrary. They're justified by narrative context. It's the Riddler he's going to riddle. Second, they are almost entirely optional challenges. If you don't want to do them, you don't have to. But even if you do decide to hunt them down, they aren't too hard, requiring you to either find your way to a specific vantage point to line up a big question mark, or take a photo of the set decoration based on a prompt. They're simple, fun to find, and go a long way to helping you play the role of the world's greatest detective, without taking away from the superhero action that most of the audience is there for. There are a few other games that have given me the same experience, which I've already discussed in a couple of my other videos. The bottom line is, for a game to really let you feel smart for beating it, it has to present you with a problem or a goal, give you the tools to find a solution, and wait for you to come up with it. What excites me is that there are always more games out there for me to discover and enjoy. If there are any games that I didn't cover today that made you feel like a genius, please let me know in the comments and I will be very happy to check them out. Thank you very much to the patrons over at Patreon for helping me make these videos possible. You can support from only $2 a month, link in the description. Thank you to everybody who has made it this far in the video. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!